Welcome to the Sustainable Clinical Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Sarah Smith. I am a practicing rural family physician and the charting coach. This is the podcast for physicians and advanced practice providers who are ready to step back from the busyness of their clinical day to share ideas, question everything, and redesign their clinical day. We are redesigning clinical medicine to create sustainable clinical days and create time for our lives outside of medicine. Join us for discussions with world experts who are helping design sustainable models of clinical medicine and the physicians or clinicians who have discovered or designed sustainable models of clinical medicine for themselves. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind those of you who are working on backlogs, just check in the www.chartingcoach.ca/backlog-buddies is a place you can come and do your backlog alongside fellow clinicians and physicians. So if you want to kind of hang out and have some ability to stay on task for the 2-hour sessions, come along. We'd love to see you there. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Today we have with us Dr. Sasha Shillcutt, who runs the Brave conference and is also an author, and you can check out her TED Talk, which is super fun. I did check that out this morning before we caught up with each other, just to remind myself about Sasha. So welcome. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I've been a big fan of yours for many years, and thank you just for all that you do for all of us in medicine to keep us in medicine. I love when I see physicians, leaders that are trying to improve our culture so that we stay in medicine, because I think we all need to, but obviously there's a lot of people leaving medicine. So I just appreciate what you do, and I'm really grateful to be here. I am a cardiac anesthesiologist and professor of anesthesiology at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. And my story is probably similar to many people listening. I have 4 children, and I had them over the course of about 7 years. And I found myself early in my career, probably about 8 or 10 years in, feeling extreme doubt about a decade ago, and wanting to quit everything, wanting to quit medicine, wanting to quit my research, wanting to quit speaking and leading and teaching, and feeling like a total failure in both motherhood and medicine. And that led me to kind of a wake-up call when a couple of people I knew in medicine died from suicide. And I thought, wow, if it could happen to these amazing people who we so loved in medicine and gave so much of their life to medicine, it could definitely happen to me. So I really took about a year to say no, which was hard for me. I'd never said no. I was the person that everybody knew would say yes, and that's what led me to burnout. I also found myself having somewhat of an identity crisis, because I realized that as a woman in anesthesiology, specifically in a male-dominated environment, I had learned how to survive by taking on a lot of male attributes that weren't working for me as a woman. So some of them were working, but some of them were really, I was experiencing a lot of backlash. So I had this feeling of like not being authentic, at the same time burning out. And I took a year to say no. At the end of that year, I was a completely different person. I had boundaries, but I was lonely, like Sarah, really lonely. And I realized, like, I don't have other women around me to even just say I've had a bad day, and this is the day that I've had, or this is the bias I experienced, or did I experience bias, right? So I started a text group with about 10 other women that I literally just said, do you want to be in a text group where we encourage each other? And that grew to a Facebook group, and that grew to thousands and thousands of doctors in that Facebook group. And then that became my company, Brave Enough, where now I teach courses and hold conferences for women physicians. That's the gist of it.
Coming out of your own loneliness. I love this that you went, I'm lonely, I need community, I need my people, and I need them on speed dial text.
Yeah.
What did those
Yeah.
texts look like when you started texting each other? Like, what would you text each other?
Yeah, it was really funny because it was a very hodgepodge group of women, and I was basically asking for friendship, but in a way that wasn't like we have to see each other every day because that's impossible, right? With our lives. And I recognized that over like the span of a decade plus, while you're going through training and figuring out your career and having kids, we kind of lose friendships. I mean, I did. I just put them on the back burner. It was like, that's something that maybe I'll pick up again someday. So our texts really just looked like I would send out an encouraging text every day, and then everybody else would kind of chime in. Um, and what was funny was if I didn't send out something every day, then it was like, where's the text from you? And so that's why my husband was like, what is happening on your phone? Your phone is like, you have 7,000 text messages. Like, so that's why I kind of transitioned it to a Facebook group. And then that Facebook group really grew. But it was very positive and it was very also vulnerable. And I recognized in that group, what it taught me was I was not alone in my struggles, and that just being positive doesn't mean that you're not going through something hard. And it was not like toxic positivity. It was I'm having a hard day with this. So I'm looking for this positive thing and I'm trying to hold on to this positive thread. And the other women would be like, oh, yes, because, they would give me a truth or they would give me encouragement. So it was very vulnerable, but also a very positive thing.
Yeah. Did you find that the loneliness was within the work environment, within the motherhood environment? Like, where were you experiencing loneliness and or that desire for friends or peers?
Well, I think both places, quite honestly. It's hard to say you're lonely when you're surrounded by people.
Mm.
But I think my loneliness originated in my struggles as a woman in medicine. I didn't feel like at work I could show that I was struggling. I had to put up a I wear a mask that I was this strong person who could do anything, because the minute someone smells weakness, right, they're going to exploit that perhaps or take advantage of you. So I felt like on one hand, like I wanted to be seen as a serious leader who could handle all the things. So I hid a lot of that vulnerability at work. And then at home, I was totally lonely, even though I have an amazing husband and partner who is very hands-on. He's not a cardiac anesthesiologist. He doesn't know what it's like to go into an OR with all men every day and feel like you're sometimes ignored, experience bias, and then also feeling the guilt of motherhood. All of that left me very lonely.
Got it. You mentioned male attributes that you'd taken on to try and um, offset some of the day-to-day. Tell us about that. What did that look like? What had you seen modeled or had taken on and tried on to try and overcome some of these things?
That's a wonderful question. I'm so glad you asked it, because I want to be clear. I don't think there's one way to be as a woman. I think that women have leaders. There's some quiet leaders that are very powerful leaders. There's extroverted leaders who are great leaders. We shouldn't have one role model. And actually, every time there's a book that says like, this is how you should be as a woman leader, I just go insane, because we're all so diverse and we should open that diversity up to women as leaders as well. However, I will say that I modeled myself unbeknowingly after the leaders around me, and the leaders above me were all men. So I looked at them and was like, well, this is how they talk, this is how they act, so I'm going to do that. And it didn't work for me. I would go into a code situation and run a code like my male partner, who was 10 years older than me, would run a code, and I would get written up because I was giving orders or doing my job and being authoritative. And what I would then find myself do after I would run the code, I would like do what I call bossy cleanup. I'd be like, how's your son's soccer going? How's the, I would literally have to like make up for me just being authoritative and running a code. My male partners never had to do that. And so this lack of me being able to just be who I was and lead as I was something that took me a long time to figure out. And especially when you're a woman in medicine and you get that negative feedback, like you're being too authoritative, you're, yelling out orders, or if it's my dad dying, please yell out orders. Please yell for epinephrine in the crash cart if it's my father, right? So like, it took me a long time to realize that, number one, there are some ways I'm going to act that society and our systematic culture of medicine is never going to be okay with, right? Even other women are not okay with it. And I have to accept that I'm just going to do the right thing. And I'm going to be authoritative when I need to be. And I'm going to be the leader I need to be. But then there are some other things. For example, I'm a very compassionate physician. And there are times where I cry at the bedside because I'm talking to a family member and I can't say we're going to bring this person back alive. I can't promise that. And I would watch, the family members, and I would get tearful. And there was part of me that would be like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. You're going to be seen as the weak woman cardiac anesthesiologist. Everybody's watching you. Your residents, your fellows, everybody's watching you. Actually, I should be able to cry if that's who I am as an anesthesiologist. So I've had to learn, and I think it takes a long time for us as women to learn how we can express our authentic selves in medicine.
I find that interesting. Because I'm thinking if you were yelling within that code situation, not because you'd seen it modeled by the male partner, but because that's who you truly authentically are within a code situation, that then takes a different level of analysis when you get written up after.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
Because if you're like, I'm modeling it based on what I've seen, and now I'm wrong for that because I'm being written up. So now I have to, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
That identity crisis you talk about. Who am I then in a code if that's not actually how I actually want to show up? But it's a very high emotional, very fast-paced moment where you don't have a lot of time for pause. Should I say it that way? Pause. Am I doing it right? Pause. You're like, go. It's a code
Right.
blue.
Yes, right. And so it's very, it's very tricky. And one time, I will never forget this. I was working with a resident who actually became our fellow, and he's like 6'5". And we were running a very traumatic situation, and we got done, and I said, let's debrief. And we debriefed for like 5 minutes, and I was complimenting him on his work and his effort and how he handled this crisis. And he said, Dr. Shillcutt, can I give you feedback? And I was like, oh, yes, give me feedback. Here it comes. I was like, what is he going to say? And he said, you said you were sorry afterwards, and you were the only woman doctor in the room, and you were the only one that apologized. And he said, you didn't do anything wrong. I don't know why you apologized. And I was so taken back by the fact that me apologizing for literally saving someone's life and running a code. I didn't swear, I didn't throw anything, I didn't scream or anything, but me just being so like, I'm running the code, everyone listen to me, get this, do this, get this. He's like, you apologized for, I didn't even recognize that I had apologized, and it affected him. He was like, you don't need to apologize. It actually made you look like you were doing something wrong when you weren't. So I think sometimes we have this unconscious reaction to wanting to be liked and wanting to not get written up, or wanting to make sure we didn't hurt anyone's feeling, because that's what's expected of us as women, really. And it's very complicated. These are complicated identities that we have to really think through.
Yeah, well, the experience of being written up because you're doing your job is going to come forward into your next code. And so, of course, you're going to be like, well, there's part of me that's sorry that I yelled, but I'm kind of happy that we did what we did as a team. But if I apologize, maybe that will take some of the heat off the anger that might come out to be written up.
Correct. Yes.
So it's kind of protective. And then at the same time, you're getting this feedback saying, that belittled you.
Right. And this is all stuff that I feel like we all bring home and we can ruminate. I mean, I coach a lot of women who do the rumination. I've done the rumination plenty of times. Like, should I have said that? Did I say this? Is this person going to be mad? Am I going to get written up? Am I going to get an email? And it's like things that, if you talk to your male partners, they're like, I don't even think about that. Like, I've never had that thought. And so it's just a tax on us that we have to really recognize that a lot of times, it may be unnecessary. Maybe we just let it go. I'm learning to just let it go and go, okay, the minute I get out of this car and go in the house, I'm not thinking about this anymore. I'm going to let it go.
I'm not going to bring it home.
Correct.
Yeah. That can be much harder said than done.
Yes.
Right. Depending on the level of emotional energy required for that particular piece that just happened. All right. So the year of saying no, I really like this idea. Tell us more. So what had you been doing and what did you kind of say no to?
Yeah, I really wish I would have saved this marker board that I had in my office, because a friend of mine, I told my friend and coworker, I am going to say no. And I said, I'm really trying hard to say no to everything that doesn't fall into these three categories. So I had 3 goals and 3 categories. And if it didn't fall into these 3 categories, it was going to be a hard no for me. So I kind of made an algorithm for myself. That was step 1. And then I was sharing with her after like a month of this, how hard it was. First, people didn't believe me. I would say no, and people would be like, ha ha ha, see you next month at the meeting. And I was like, clearly I'm not good at this. I do not know how to say no and make it stick. So I learned how to say no immediately, which is opposite of what a lot of leaders will tell you to do. They'll say, think about it for 24 hours. No, I learned how to say no the minute the email came in or the minute someone stopped me. And that is a skill that I still use and is so powerful. I teach this skill to women and in my books and courses, because when you get an ask and in your like your gut, like you don't have time for it, you don't get paid to do it, or it just doesn't something that you may love this thing, but you don't have the capacity to show up 100%. Say no immediately, because the person that's asking you will love you for that, because then they can ask the next person. They're not waiting for your maybe that turns into a yes, because now you've procrastinated. And so I was talking to my friend and I said, oh my gosh, I'm having such a hard time with this. I'm trying to say no unless it's these 3 things. And she said, well, do what you always say you do. Write it on your little board in there that you always have written up stuff. And she's like, every time you say no, make a no list. And I was like, that's a really good idea. So about 3 months into my year, I started writing down everything I'd said no to on this magic eraser board. And I was blown away, because it showed me 2 things. Number 1, it showed me how many things I would have said yes to that did not fit in my goals for the year. Number 2, it gave me evidence I could say no and people would still ask me to do things. Because
Yeah.
I was a junior person and I felt like if I say no, this person is never going to ask me again. This organization is never going to ask me again. That didn't happen. They kept asking me even if I said no. So it was good for me to see I can do this. I can say no and I can still be a part of the academic community. I can still do the things I love to do. And nobody's going to like blackball me because I said no once.
Yeah. Powerful. I think that often we wonder if this is the only time I'll be asked to do this, or such a honor to be asked to do this, or and it doesn't fit and you don't have the time and you can't do it, or you're going to sacrifice something else.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What were you trying to hold on to? What were some of the priorities for that year?
Well, I had a research project that I was wrapping up and I really wanted to get it published. So that was number 1. And I also was trying to really hone in on my speaking skills. So I told myself that I was only going to speak or accept speaking engagements if they were in this 3-topic area, because I realized I was giving like 20 talks a year on 20 different topics. And I thought, I'm never going to be a really good public speaker if I continue to do that. So I'm going to speak on these 3 things. And if someone asks me to speak, I'm going to email them back and say, I can speak on these 3 things. And if they don't want those 3 things, it's a no. And then the third thing was actually my family. I had a goal of being with my family. Kids were out of to say no to anything June, July, and August. And that's what I still do that. I'm really proud of myself. I'll always want to, and I craft my year. Don't work June, July, August. And there's been some really wonderful opportunities that I've had to give up. But at the end of the day, you know, I've now launched one child to college. I'm about to launch a second child. It goes so fast. And I'm so proud of myself that I have stuck to that boundary.
Yeah. What about within your training time and your years in your clinical role, where you've had to navigate into kind of containing work to work time? Like when does work spilled over? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So work spills over, work used to spill over all the time. There was zero boundaries. I would be working on the side of a soccer field. I would be working on vacation. I'm not perfect. It's not perfect. And I don't claim to have a perfect system because I think we have to give ourselves the flexibility to flex and change as our priorities do. But for example, you know, a couple years ago, I wrote my first book published my first book in 2020, my second in 2022. And I knew if I wanted to write a book, I basically had to stop doing academic publishing. I could not publish papers and publish a book. So I made a conscious effort that I was going to say no to those opportunities to write a book. So I wrote my book on Saturday and Sunday mornings. I would get up early and I was committed to that. It didn't matter if I was on vacation, if I was where I was. Every Saturday and Sunday morning, I would wake up early and I would crank out a couple hours of book writing. And that year, those years, didn't publish a lot academically. I went from being very academically productive to journal wise to not being as productive. One thing but there have been years certainly where I've been publishing and I'm writing at night, I'm writing on the weekend, my work spills over. One thing I have definitely improved in the last probably 5 years, I've held on to this boundary, and I talk about it in my book, email. In fact, I just had I had to reset the boundary yesterday on email at work. I don't do work email unless I'm at work. I don't answer it on my phone. I don't answer it on vacation. I don't answer work email on nights and weekends. That is a massive change for me as about 5 years ago. Because when you teach people that you can answer their emails at 10 o'clock at night or Saturday mornings, that's their expectation of you. And it's your responsibility to set the boundary that you want. Maybe you love answering emails on Saturdays and Sundays and nights. I don't. And the problem is that even if I'm answering a 30-second email, work has now hijacked my brain. So I might be at dinner with my family, but now I'm answering this email because it's a super simple question, but now I'm thinking about work. I'm not thinking about the conversation. And now I'm frustrated, maybe. So for me, I do not answer email unless I'm at work. I may stay an hour later to answer emails. I might go in an hour. Like yesterday, I came back from vacation. I went in an hour earlier before the OR and I answered emails for an hour. But that's a very strong boundary that I have learned to set that works for me.
Yeah, I love that because we all have vacation time. We have, we may or may not use it, but understanding our boundaries and what we will and won't accept, super helpful. What about when you get that pushback that from maybe the employer or your academic team that why didn't you answer my email or questions in that kind of area?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's called boundary backlash, and we all get it because the truth is that medicine kind of can take advantage of our altruistic nature as physicians. Like you're always on, right? You're always a doctor. You're always a good team member. And there's a lot of physicians, especially leaders, who have no boundaries. That's why they're burned out. And they expect you, someone with no boundaries, will not respect your boundaries. They don't understand boundaries. They don't have them themselves. So if you're working for a leader or working with colleagues who don't have boundaries, they're going to expect you to do what they do. And when you start to set boundaries, two things are going to happen. They're either going to be angry, and most of it is jealousy because they haven't figured out how to set the boundaries themselves and take a vacation or take a weekend off, or they're going to be inspired, right? Because I probably have 2 or 3 people that will get angry at my boundaries and be emailing passive aggressive things like, well, Sasha's on vacation. Hopefully she sees this, right? And then I also have people who are like, thank you for setting a boundary around email because you just let me do that. Like you doing that, let me know it's okay for me to do that. If you cannot take a vacation without responding to work, then I would say you have very poor planning and leadership. I trust the people that work in my division and that are the leaders to make decisions in my absence. If I trust that. And you never want to be the only one that does something. That fills our ego and makes us feel great, but it's actually toxic to do that, to be like, nobody can solve this problem but me. It sounds like you're being a martyr and a team player, but it's actually a very arrogant, egotistical statement. You want to be able to leave and trust that everyone else will carry on and do the work.
Yeah. Take us back to that time when you were feeling like a total failure on every playing field. How did you come up with this saying no? What was the kind of phases you went through to investigate why you felt like a full failure on every area and what you stepped through?
Yeah, it was kind of like when people quit medicine because they're burned out or they just up and leave. We always want to find the one reason, but there's always many reasons. It was like that for me. I was severely burned out from doing so many things, and I was doing so many things that I was doing them at 50%. So because I was doing them at 50%, I felt like a failure because I think we all got into medicine getting 100%, earning gold stars and being perfectionists and doing amazing. And when you're doing, I wish there was another word for half-ass, because you might want to edit this out of your podcast, but there's just not another word. When you half-ass everything, you feel like a half-ass, like that's how you feel. And I was missing things for my kids. I was missing deadlines. I was dropping the ball at work because I wasn't able to get things done because I was doing too many things. So instead of doing 3 things at 120 things at 25, 30, 50%. And I thought, because I was like, what is wrong with me? I couldn't see that what was wrong was my overcommitment and overfunctioning. I kept thinking, what is wrong with me? I'm trying to do everything and I'm failing. And when you are in that low place, you start having really negative thoughts like, what if I just quit tomorrow? What if I'm not meant to be a doctor? What if I'm not meant to be a mom? And those thoughts were really scary to me, and they were kind of like a wake-up call to me. And I remember exactly where I was when I had this kind of come to Jesus moment, where I was out of town at a training for TAVR program we were starting, and I could not stop crying. Like, I was in the hotel room and I saw myself, actually, Sarah, like I saw a reflection of me and I looked like no one I recognized, and I couldn't stop crying. And I thought, starting tomorrow, I'm changing, and I'm changing by 2 things: saying no to anything that doesn't fit in these 3 pockets, and also giving myself 30 minutes every morning, giving myself 30 minutes a day, getting up extra early and giving myself 30 minutes to do whatever it is I want to do. Those 2 steps radically changed me. It took a while. It took like a year. It didn't happen overnight, but I got myself back again.
Nice. Was there anybody noticing you were half-assing it? Like, was there anybody that was kind of stepping alongside you saying, hey, Sasha?
I don't think anyone I don't think anyone ever confronted me and said, you're not doing a great job.
Mhm.
Nobody ever said that. What I got more of was, wow, you're doing everything.
Mm,
Wow. And that was actually bad because that fed my
mm,
ego to where I kept thinking, okay, I gotta keep juggling all these balls, right? People were like impressed with me. Oh my gosh,
mm.
you're doing this, you're doing that. And that made me feel externally validated. So I never had somebody say like, you're not doing a good job. You're missing deadlines. It was more my internal critic that was knowing like I'm not doing a very good job of that. So that's how that played out.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. And it might be a good source of reflection for us if we're actually feeling people are impressed by us. Maybe that's also saying, actually, or if we want to compliment a colleague to say, wow, you're doing everything, maybe do the opposite to kind of check in with them and say, how are you doing? You're doing everything.
Yes, I wish one of my mentors, or I would have had a mentor say, we're worried about you. You
Mm,
seem to be doing a lot, because that probably would have opened a door for me to feel like it was okay to say, yeah, I actually am. I think I need to let go of some things.
mhm. Yeah, so good. Yeah. Tell us about Brave conference and the work you're doing with physicians now. Like, what does that look like?
So I've been doing a conference now for 8 years. It's really my passion, and it's every September in Scottsdale at the end of September. And it's really a place for the whole physician to come, bring yourself just as you are. I want women to show up just as they are. I don't want them to feel like they have to have it all figured out or they have to be something to come. And I have a lot of different speakers outside of medicine because I think sometimes we get so isolated in medicine that we think this is the only path for us and this is the only way that we can fix problems. So I like to bring in a lot of diverse speakers who can really speak to everything from, we normally have a day of mind issues and thought issues, and then we have a day of work issues and like overcoming bias and how to set boundaries and how to not email people at 3 a.m, like strategy. And then we also have a day of wellness and really looking into our stress scale and how to create boundaries for well-being. So it's a great course, and I always have the afternoons free so that, we end the course at noon so you can enjoy the spa, enjoy the resort. I want women to just come and relax and enjoy themselves.
That sounds good. And connecting. What sort of feedback have you had from those 3 days?
Oh, incredible feedback. That's my favorite thing about it is when I from women that say, I came home this past year, the number was 8. Within 2 weeks, I got 8 emails from women who came home and quit their jobs. They literally quit their jobs. All of them went back into medicine and found a better job, but they were all in toxic environments. And the awareness, I think, and also just the permission that they had enough value to get out of this toxicity, was incredible, because I want women to stay in medicine. Then I also hear from probably 10 to 15 women email me, oh my gosh, I went home and that thing I was doing for no pay and no money that was burning me out, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And they gave me money, or they gave me time, or they gave me both to do it. Or I just said no. And I feel so good because now I have that off my shoulders.
Mm,
The other thing I love about it is I really encourage every woman that comes to have a battle buddy, find a battle buddy. And so, women find their friends there, they find their people there, they go on trips together. They have one group I know made a text group, and they've been texting each other every day since the conference for years. So it's just encouraging for me to know that this conference brings women together and may actually save a life, and save somebody from leaving medicine, or God forbid, taking their own life.
mm. Perfect. Where do people find you if they're looking to connect or do some work with you?
You can find me on social media at Become Brave Enough, or on becomebraveenough.com. I have a little Friday newsletter. I send out a little thoughts of my week. It's called The Scoop. You can sign up on my website, becomebraveenough.com.
Perfect. And anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about today?
No, I don't think so. I just loved our conversation. Thanks for letting me share my story.
Perfect. If somebody is in that messiness right now where they're feeling a total failure, they're feeling like they're half-assing it, they feel like they're doing a lot of things and they're getting very impressive. Wow, you're doing everything. What would you say to them?
I would say that pausing, just pause, is so powerful, and do some self-reflection. And it's a compliment if you find yourself over-functioning and overwhelmed, because it means people trust you, but it's going to lead to burnout, and beat yourself up if you find yourself burned out, but just pause and ask yourself the hard questions, like what am I giving up? What part of my health and well-being am I giving up to be doing all these things? And what can I say no to?
I love that. Well, thank you so very much for being here today, Sasha. I think that this is a great conversation. So a lot of people are going to identify as the one doing everything or the woman getting written up because you're thinking or doing things in a non-authentic way, that sort of thing. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast. If you'd like to learn more or join us to help you get home with today's work done, go to chartingcoach.ca. There you'll find all the information on the Premier Lifetime Access Charting Champions program that is helping physicians get home with today's work done, with all the proven tools, support, and community you need to create time for your life outside of medicine. We would love to see you there. Until next time, thanks for listening.